Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Masks Off. I am Kim.
And I'm Tia.
And today we're so excited to have our first male guest. This is Robert Astwood. And we are going to talk about education today. We're going to have a great conversation, just see where it goes, talk about masks and how masks may play into the education world. But before we start talking, I will share the quote, which was actually from Robert. And the quote is, "Youth should be a period of discovery, wonder, excitement. It should be filled with learning through experiences and cultivating the various parts of the human person, not just their technical math or linguistic minds, but their kinesthetic, emotional, and intrapersonal minds as well." Robert Astwood. So welcome, Robert. If you want to share with our listeners a little bit about who you are and how you got to do what you're doing.
Well, first of all, Kim and Tia, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I know it's been a challenge to get on here, but things that are worth it, usually you have to go through a little bit of challenge first. So yeah, I'm here. I think what got me to education was I originally started off in senior year of college with my kind of idea of philosophy, and I wanted to teach philosophy, um, just like as a professor. So fast forward, I go through that whole thing of, all right, I want to do that. So I go through the undergrad, get the philosophy degree, communications degree, and then I was like, all right, being a professor is good, but I feel like it's not going to be enough. It's not going to cast a wide enough net. So I decided, let me get more into, all right, how can I kind of get more systemic, like a real impact? So I actually ended up going to Teachers College, Columbia University. Haven't finished yet, but that's another story. I'll finish. Or maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I studied philosophy and education there. And that's really where I started getting like that rethinking schools from the ground up idea. And then I really felt like, there's much more I could do in terms of impact. So if I try to change the education system, like from a systemic point, I feel like that would have a much more salient and meaningful effect on the world than just like being a regular teacher. Like, I mean, that's still good, but you have a limited reach. So that's kind of like in a nutshell, like why I got it. Like what's kind of brought me to education is like, all right, that need to see real change, like real systemic change.
Yeah. And we need that. We need more systemic change on so many levels. And to really focus on the education system is a great way to start, because you're going to be supporting kids and their critical thinking and everything, and that you talk about in that quote and in the work that you're doing. I just love your vision that you shared, that I've read about you, and I'm so excited to hear more in this conversation.
So I have a question. What was your education like, K through 12? And what did you see as being a problem? Is that where like originally you started to say like, okay, there is something wrong with the education world and something needs to change?
And I have like public schools experience, but like not like a crazy amount. Like in third grade, that's kind of when I went to public school up to third grade, and then I went to like Catholic school. But even still, like even it being a Catholic school, like that doesn't, like you would think, oh, like maybe they do things differently. Some of them now do, but back then it was still like very, all right, you need to study for this test. You need to like get this homework in on time. Like there was no like meditation or spirituality or like there wasn't anything like teaching you about how to be a person. Like it was more so teaching you about the things that we've done in history, like as people, like as humans, teaches you about like human history, but you don't really learn about how, like, how does that relate to you, and how can you use that to ensure that you create a better future moving forward. Like they don't really teach you that, like how to use your knowledge effectively and uniquely. So I feel like that's one of the things that I saw that was like missing.
Yeah, 100%. So I've shared before on the podcast, and I think I shared with you as well, that prior to having my kids, so this is many years ago, I haven't taught school, but I did teach in a public school system. And in one way, I had the liberty of having some flexibility because I taught the at-risk students. So it was like a school within a school. There's
Right.
maybe 2,000 kids in the high school, and there was 40 kids in this program. And these were high schoolers, teenagers that were all at risk of dropping out of high school. So, and here you go, right? So there was the expectation by the administration that these kids will never be able to pass the Regents exams anyway. In New York State, we have Regents exams. They're lucky if they make it through till graduation. So they didn't have the same expectations for those students as they did for the mainstream, which, okay, in one sense, maybe that's okay, but in another sense, they're putting a label on them. They're putting them in a box and saying, you're not going to be able to amount to much because of where you come from and your background. So there's that piece of it that's really bad. But on the other hand, because it was this little school within a school, I had a little bit more flexibility in terms of doing more creative things. And, you know, I had like one year they did fundraising, they sold candy bars or cookies or whatever to raise money so that at the end of the year, they could go to an amusement park that we did as a field trip. So it, you know, they had to learn how to save, they had to go sell. There's all these other like life skills that were incorporated in it. But even still, that was only a small drop in the bucket of what I could do with them, because there were still some guidelines, there was still a curriculum that I had to teach. I could change some of the books around, but I still had to do certain things. And so there's these confines that you put on learning, as you talk about in your book so well. So do you want to speak on that a little bit? And maybe you can talk about what you write about in your book and what your thoughts are on that.
Well, yeah, definitely. You know, Kim, I think there's like a limited view on what learning even means. You know, that's why I wrote the book, is because I think that we need to rethink and reevaluate and just kind of just think, all right, there's much more, like we can expand our view, let's say it like that, of commonly held ideas. And learning is one of them, you know. And I think that in schools, I think the bottom line is like the focus on testing. Like that's a lot of that takes up a lot of time in terms of like what happens in the actual school day is like reliance on that old industrial model, you know, like the factory model, and really just treating the students as like empty bank accounts, you know, just to deposit information into, you know, like the banking model of education. So I think what we need to do is really, I'm just wondering, how do we start off a system or rebuild the system? And like what's, I guess, what factor, like what part of it would you focus on? I think one of those factors is like, what do you value as important and worth talking about during class, like spending the whole 6 hours talking about? Like, should we talk about what happened in 1492? Like, I don't know. Like, you could still keep doing that, but you know, or should we talk about how can we take advantage of the cryptocurrencies that are happening right now, or how can we, you know, learn how to face our fears, or how can we get in touch with our spiritual intuition? Like, I think those are more relevant and more useful. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong to talk about, you know, history, but at the same time, like, if you're gonna do that, at least have like at the core values, like real practical life skills, like things that you really, not only a life skill, but human capacities that need to be taught. So I think like the shift, like in a nutshell, I think there needs to be a shift from like ranking and production and testing to like enrichment, success mindsets, and I don't know, cultivating a brighter future. That's my catchphrase. Whenever I don't know what to say, cultivate a brighter future. That's it.
I love
So
it.
yeah.
Tia, looks like you had something to say.
No, I mean, it's such an important conversation to have and to really recognize, like, yeah, we can teach history or this, that, or the other, but let's talk, what about the depth of the history? How can we bring that into the present? What does that mean about the human spirit? What was the experience, I mean, like what you were talking about, what were the values back then in that history and those decisions that we're making? Or do we talk about something in the present that can be real life? They can touch it, see it, feel it, because it's presently happening. So it's not either or, it's both and, but the common thread of the values and, what does success look like to you? How does it feel to you? Because success is such a term that isn't defined as a one way.
Mm-hmm.
Each student is going to have a different path. And that doesn't mean one path is better than the other. It just means, is that lighting that student up from the inside? And then, they can switch gears when they learn about the next topic or the next thing that inspires them and find their own way through. And how do we cultivate that inner being of each student? And, it's a challenge. I don't know. I don't have answers. I'm not an educator.
Well, the first step would be to actually allow them to voice what they want to do. Because a lot of schools, they just impose upon, because I go to different seminars and, I'm doing a new job now. That's my, tier. That's my old, I guess I'm leaving that job now that I'm going to an actual school, I'm going to a private school. Like it's like a grassroots startup private school. It's not even a startup. It's been out for a while, but it's just that it's smaller. But I feel like if you want to really see real change in the schools, and if you want to make a difference, you have to include students in that process. Like they're a main education stakeholder, and they can't just keep having like class or whatever they're learning, like the whole school day imposed on them. Like they have to at least have some kind of, addition. Like they have to have what's the word I'm looking for? They need a contribution like that. Like you have to be able to actually contribute to what they're doing. Because if it's just something that they're not choosing, that's why they're so, it's no wonder why they're so like apathetic or not wanting to do it. Because it's like nobody wants to do something that they're forced to do.
Exactly. And bringing in their intrinsic desire to continue to learn. I mean, we want to inspire them to continue to have a love of learning, because kids are naturally born that way. And I mentioned to you before we hit recording, my daughters went to Montessori through 7th grade. And I always remember Dr. Montessori's quote, "Follow the child," because when they can decide, I mean, obviously, yes, they have to learn basic things, but you can bring that in through what inspires them. Like one of my daughters did research on the fennec fox, and that involved geography. It involved what is the evolution? Why did this fox have these monster ears? So like it brings in all the things that we expect children to learn, but it comes from an excitement and a desire to understand, and how does this apply to me? Look, how can I go out and find the information rather than it being fed to me? And I think that's a really important thing that you're talking about, like how you putting it into them versus them seeking and having and encouraging that drive to wanting to understand versus being told what to do. I think that's a huge missing piece in education, like you just talked about, bringing the kids in. Because you don't see that in many schools.
It's not very, like there's a few schools that are doing it, and if it is done in like maybe a public school, like it'll probably be done as an add-on. But I don't know if I've seen that in a public school. But if it is done, it's going to be like an initiative. It's not going to be something that's at the core value, and that's really all I'm about, is like getting to the core, like changing core values. Because if you don't change the core values of what education, the purpose of it is, like they're going to keep shortchanging it, and there's a difference. Like I talked about in the book, the essence of education. There's a difference between what schooling is and what education is. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of the time, like people look at schooling as if it was education, and like I kind of automatically assume it to be. But the way it's going now, it's really just social indoctrination. It's not fortifying like learners in the way it should be. It's not giving them experiences that they can use for a later event, like how Dewey says, or it's not like leveling them up mentally and spiritually. It's just preparing them to follow rules and play with norm, like play in the realm of norms, like the regular, what's already accepted. So yeah, it's improve and push you to move beyond a greater, beyond your greatest level, like beyond that, it's like that.
Yeah.
So so the big question is, how do we change the core values of the education paradigm?
Well, and that is a beautiful question. And a lot of people are like, oh man, like it's always about the money. And I don't know, I don't go right to the money, like where the funding is coming from. I'm going to what we can do. Like the change doesn't come from us yelling at or protesting for it to come and, yelling at the people and shit, like the officials or whatever. I think the change really comes from everybody like doing what they can do, like at your level. So right now, like for me, like I'm 26, I have a little bit of experience in education. I'm still not a master, but what I can do right now is I can do a podcast on education. I can influence people and tell them, like, to get them to think about different ways to see the world differently. Boom, you can do that. You could urge people to be self-reflective. You can get on social media and you could make posts about how to, tap into your intuition and how to, by the way, these are all things I do,
Yeah.
but these are all things that I can do. They're immediately, like, they're in my circle of influence, something that I could directly do and control. So it's like, I feel like if we can just focus on that, like just educate yourself to a level, like to get yourself to see the world differently. Because we got to be honest, everybody is growing up in this US production capitalist society where you produce and consume. You go to work and then you go home, and that's kind of what the school system is preparing you to do. Is like, all right, you go to school, go home, do the homework, come back to school, do it all
That's
over
so
again.
freaking sad. That's so freaking sad, the way you just described our society. But it's because it's true.
Yeah, that's the paradigm. And I think I'm coming up with a third book. See, there's a second book. I completely skipping that one. This third one, that it's not going to be directly about education. It's more so about what I just talked about, like the production, consumption versus, well, the other paradigm that I just created is creation versus creation and recharging. So like, I think, that's one really good lesson that we could learn that should be taught in schools is, instead of viewing the world as just production, consumption, let's view it as, all right, what can we make, like create is like, make something for posterity, right? Or just create like an experience, or create, a better, something that's going to better you, like connections. Or then recharging is like, things like this podcast, or things like listening, like reading a book, doing something that's going to also make you smarter, faster, like more in tune with the world. Meditation is another thing, mindfulness, those kind of things are like recharging. I think that's a nicer paradigm than just like, working and then consuming, because consuming is kind of mindless,
Yes.
But when you think about it though, you are going to end up, I feel like it's like a 4 quadrants, like you're going to end up going in, like sometimes so you do end up having to do things you don't want to do, like produce, like, you have to eat and live indoors. But at the same time, sometimes you do have to just be a little mindless, play a quick movie, it depends. But it's just not getting too much in the consumption or too much in the production. Like if you're going to do one to extreme, I would say at least like, try to improve yourself and create as much as you can. Like if you're going to do anything to the extreme,
Well, it's
So
about balance,
that
right? It's all about balance. And T and I, we always talk about the balance between the form and the formless. And I think that's a little bit of what you're saying. The form, like you have to produce, you have to have money to eat, you have to have a house, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And then, the formless is all the stuff that we talk about, like spirituality and being more authentic and growing and evolving and healing, like all of that stuff. So, and I think there's starting to be more of a shift of that, but still there's such a long way to go when you look at like our society on how many people are just in that produce and consume mindset. So, and then, so one of the things that, I mean, we're masks off. So we talk about taking masks off or wearing masks. How do you think that what you've been describing about education and society, if you do think, or how do you think that kind of contributes to people putting masks on?
What are you saying?
Like in terms of not being maybe their most authentic self, like the kind of like education, even in terms of, you said we're just producing these students, we're dumping information into them, and then they're coming out and they're just producing and consuming. So how does that prevent one from being their most authentic self, and that they then might wear a mask of competency or overachieving or whatever the case is? Like mine's perfectionism. I'm a perfectionist. When I was in school, I did the whole straight A's. I learned the information to pass the test, to graduate number 10 in my class. Ask me one thing that I learned from high school, I could tell you it's zero. Zero things do I remember. But you know what? I was number 10 in my class, right? Who cares? It has nothing, right? So, but I wore the perfectionist mask. So that's what I mean by that kind of education that I went through, the kind of create and develop that perfection mask.
Yeah, I think a lot of students, like and I try to go, like when I go out to different schools and whenever I'm in the classroom, I try to like make sure that that these grades are just like, it's just an external thing. Like they don't actually define who you are as a person. Like even if you don't do well on them, like it doesn't mean that you're not smart or anything. So I do try to make sure people don't like define themselves by these standards and whatnot. But yeah, I do think it gets in the way of just being your spiritual self, just knowing like who you actually are. Because like, I mean, forget about the grades, like just the social media and the certain, I'm talking about teenagers specifically, like I'm kind of like getting into media now, like how like certain media makes you think certain ways about people. And like there's just no positive, there's no mindfulness, or not enough mindfulness media, you know.
Oh, I
So
love that.
I know, that's
think,
great.
is that like a special
mindfulness media is, yeah, keep going, that's great.
Because that ties into education too. I mean, like that's so like your vision is huge.
I'm not talking about schooling, I'm talking about education right now. Like I'm talking about like the inculcating, like the shaping, the framing, like the building of one's mind, you know. Like that's not conducive to like developing your full human abilities and like developing who you came here to be. You know, that's why I was saying like the social media, like a lot of students, like when they come in and they're talking to each other, whatever, like they might be comparing themselves to something they've seen on TV, or like maybe, like other friends, like, oh, so-and-so has this and that. And it's like all of that, like, why don't we teach how to not think like that in schools? Like, I feel like that would be helpful too. But that goes into the thing about the masks though, because like it's like a social mask. It's kind of like, like you're trying to keep up with, not keep up with the Joneses, but like you aren't your true self. You don't give your true self to people in public because of societal rules. I feel like, if you let's say if you're somebody who's loud, but society, like you're in the library, all right, you're not allowed to be loud in the library. That's a valid rule, but you still aren't going to be loud in the library, even if that's a part of you. So you're not going to show that part of you in the library because society doesn't allow it. So just take that same idea and then just apply it to like something else, anything else. Like my friends don't think it's cool to use big words. So maybe you won't do that. Or like, it's not cool to talk about investing, maybe so you won't do that, so that's a mask too. So I don't know. I'm just thinking of that now. Maybe that could be a post. Like, are you going to send me this? I'll be able to listen to this.
Yes, of course we are. Yes, we absolutely
make an Instagram post off that. That's a good one.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, yeah, we talk about that all the time, how, just not being, able to show up as you authentically are. That is what our
Mhm.
brand is. That's what our show is all about, is how we put these masks on. And Brene Brown talks about it in a similar way. She talks about we armor up. Either way, we're covering who we truly are because we're afraid. We're afraid to put ourselves out there as authentically as we can be.
Yeah. And then building off of your work, Robert, like in education, we disconnect kids from even understanding who they are. So like your vision of bringing in more mindfulness and more meditation, more spirituality, and more of the whole thing in education. So they don't, they may notice the mask come in, we can't prevent them, but like, then they consciously know, okay, so I'm in the library, I need to be quiet, I just have to tone down this piece, but I'm choosing to do it with an intention, with an understanding, versus I don't even know why I'm doing it. I don't even know, am I loud? I like being loud, but wait, I'm not allowed to be loud, versus, oh, I'm walking into a library. This is a place where we respect the community is trying to study or learn or read, is very different energy versus something's wrong with me that because I'm loud.
Yeah, one is using altruism, like that. The last part, the latter one was altruism. Like that was an altruistic view. Like I'm doing this because of other people. There's a community. I'm trying to cultivate a brighter future. I'm trying to do that.
Yeah.
But the other one was I just need to follow the rules, which is factory model.
Ooh, I love that factory model. I love the factory model, but I love how you condense that down into such a really simple, and that goes back to, again, the capitalism, produce, consume.
Yeah.
Ooh, you've got a lot of stuff going on.
Doesn't he? I know.
Oh
really,
my
it's
God,
your questions. I feel like
fascinating.
it's the questions. Once you are around the right questions, you can bring genius out of anyone.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
so imagine teachers asking the right questions
There
of
you
their
go.
students.
Yeah. But that's the problem. You don't. The Socratic method is not. There's no time for it. Like that's the problem of time.
Yeah.
In education, which I made another post on that too. The problem of time, like, which is it's the same thing. You don't have time to struggle with a problem, to ask questions, to really even do that.
Yeah.
Because you gotta have a test in by, June or whatever. Like,
especially in high school. I mean, again, going back to when I was teaching, I had 43 minutes for a class. By the time they actually settled down, I went over what we had to do. There was probably like 30 minutes of actual time that I could try to teach anything. So I personally think that the whole entire school day needs to be changed. Like this changing of like, you have to have 7 subjects a day. Who says you have to go to all these subjects? Who says you have to go to gym? Who says, you can incorporate movement and activity in any of the other subjects that you're doing. It could be a mindful walking meditation or whatever, but who says you have to go to math and then English and then science and keep switching? It's ridiculous. And then on top of it, like in terms of lunch, like we talk about, our society, like with eating issues, you literally have sometimes 20 minutes to eat your lunch. 20 minutes. If you wanted to even teach mindful eating, you couldn't, because you have to wolf your food down. By the time you get it and then sit down, it's crazy. You don't even have time to go to the bathroom. Half the time my students would just take the hall pass and go to the bathroom and skip out in half the class, but so the whole entire structure, sitting in desks that are hard, like, can you imagine sitting, like I have this chair, it's comfy, it's cozy, but like a hard wood chair for 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day.
Yeah, and
how's that conducive to learning?
Just sitting down for so long in general for kids is like, that doesn't make sense. But I don't know. Like, they have a lot of energy, so why not you incorporate that, use that positive, use that to your advantage. Like, that's why I think that school needs to be like how you said, the whole school day needs to be just upended. But I think it needs to incorporate more of place-based learning. Like, you need to go outside and go to actual areas. Like, this is always my classic example. Like, if you want to learn about just any language or any cultural area, okay, they're going to talk about the budget. Right? It's just an example. You don't have to worry about the budget right now. But if you want to go to China, I even wrote this in the book. If you want to go to China, well, if you want to learn about China, then you should go to China. That's the best way to learn about anything, is to do it directly, I think, instead of studying books on China, you know? So just that concept, I think we need to use that concept more. Like if you want to learn about math and geometry, if we're doing it with ninth graders, okay, let's use the pool table, like let's use the billiards table. Like that's a cool way to,
Yes.
you know,
Talk
incorporate
about
math,
geometry.
you know? So I just think that's, you got to be more flexible when it comes to learning and it comes to what the school day would look like. And yeah, just incorporate more activities, more project-based, more doing, learning by doing.
And when you were talking about that, it brought two things to mind, you know, and it's just my children's education is popping in mind. I had a different education as well through fifth, but part of the process in Montessori, like actual AMI, you're following Maria's methods, is a going out. So like they would pick their topic. So one daughter, for, you know, she did the fennec foxes, another one did alternative medicine. So she reached out to an acupuncturist, went and had an acupuncture treatment.
Wow.
And interviewed her and went through the whole process, did this whole thing. Another, you know, the fennec fox went to the zoo and talked to a zookeeper about fennec foxes.
Exactly.
One did a research on Secret Service, and she found a Secret Service guy or FBI person, and he called the school, vetted the school to make sure he could talk. And all of a sudden, I remember we were leaving the school, and all of a sudden, one of the women in the office comes running out, and she's like, "They're on the phone for you. You need to come in and talk." So she interviewed this man, and he's like, "How did you find?" I mean, it was just fascinating. So it like brought in all these different lessons. And then the math aspect, like I love the billiard table, because talk about geometry. When they learned about Pythagorean's theorem in whatever, I don't know, second grade or whatever, doesn't matter. They learned the actual story of Pythagorean and the river and how it actually, you know, so it's like when you can bring it into life and experience, like you said, going to China, doing, then it's real. It's not just something you read in a book that you can't touch, feel, experience. And I think, I mean, you know, you brought up budget and all of that, but like taking the kids to the zoo, it was a 10-minute drive or 20-minute drive, you know, so if we can think outside the box a little, and, you know, I don't know what it looks like, and, you know, but it really does make a difference, because that inspires them to learn and figure things out.
Yeah, and it's much easier to remember things that you did yourself as opposed to hearing about somebody else talk about something that happened through someone else. And it's just like, it's too far removed. It's like, how does this relate to me again? You know, and it's just, right.
Right.
So I just want to share, before we start to wind up, I just want to share one part from your book. It's on page 33. So it says, and then have you comment, or we'll have a little discussion on that. So it says, to tune in would involve using everything that happens to you as a chance to grow. This means turning setbacks into stepping stones. So, and you call this engage education. So I'm focused on learning lessons and seizing opportunities, which I think is awesome. We talk about that all the time. We talk about looking at everything that happens to us in our lives as an opportunity to grow. So do you want to say more about that, this whole engage education?
Oh, thanks, Kim, for bringing up the engage education, because that's one of my secret, like, favorite parts. I'm always like, you know, bother my girlfriend about, like, we have to be more engaged. Like, we have to, like, you know, where's the lesson here? Like, I'm always I really actually do that. Like, I don't just say all these fancy things. It's hard. These things are hard to do. Like, they're really hard to do. But it's more so as long as you keep them up here, you know, and constantly, like, just at the forefront of your mind, it's easier. But yeah, the concept of engage education in like one sentence is pulling lessons out of thin air. Like that's how I like to say it. Like you got lessons from, like, you created an experience that wasn't supposed to be there, that you actually were able to garner some kind of benefit and like it's something that overtly seemed bad is like, all right, well, I'm gonna see what I could take out. What can I learn from that? Like, what can I like? Again, I told my girlfriend, I'm like, all right, we got to be positive spin specialists, and that's not me. I didn't make up that term. I learned that from.
Who'd you get that from? I love that.
Yeah, I used to work at a what is it called? Direct marketing company, and we used to go door to door knocking, like, you know, houses or whatever. So they, like, on top of the job, they also had like this success mindset kind of course built into it. So that's one of the things they said. They was like, you can complain about it being raining outside because we had to go outside when it was raining. It was like, all right, you could do that, or you can look at it as, all right, like, more people are going to be home. It might be easier for you to get inside because you can use the rain as an excuse. You know, instead of looking at the rain, like, right, like, instead of looking at the rain, oh man, it's raining, I'm gonna get wet, I'm gonna be upset, blah blah. Like, instead, you use it as a reason to be like, nah, that's why I'm gonna have a good day, because now people are gonna let me inside. So
Yeah.
it's just like rethinking how you're looking at the exact same piece of information and making it benefit you. So that's
And
kind of what engaged education is about.
And imagine children growing up with that message.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Mhm. So and that leads me to, so you might be wondering, hey, all right, Robert, that's all well and good. You know, everything you're saying sounds great in theory, but how are you going to actually make that happen? I'm glad you asked. I've been waiting for that question. So what I'm doing right now is I'm focusing, like, my main mission, if anybody was to ask you, hey, what's Robert's mission? Like, anybody that knows me, it would be like, I am the founder, I'm the owner of 10 schools in all 50 states of the US. So, like, that's my vision, is to literally rethink schools by privatization. People are going to be like, hey, dude, I don't like, people don't like that. People don't like the privatization talk. I know I'm going to get some pushback for this one, but hear me out. Like, if I can open schools that stand for everything I'm saying, like, all right, yeah, they're going to be private schools, but, you know, who knows? Like, maybe I'll be able to not charge so much. You know, maybe I'll be able to make it affordable. Maybe I'll be able to make it. I want to have such a presence, basically. That's why I said 10 schools in all 50 states, probably more than that. But the point is, I want to have such a presence in the US that and make it so accessible to people that it essentially becomes public, like, that it is a public school. Like, I know it's going to be private technically, but the vision is like, I want it to be a school that supports humanization, the whole child approach, altruism, and it's going to be like a community, like, kind of aspect to it. So, you know I'm using the P word, like the bad P word there. But, you know,
Not by my standards.
I just don't know. I don't know where else, because we're not going to fix public education, like, not unless we can get into those positions, like those official positions. And it's just, I don't know. I think that's a harder battle. I think I have a much better time opening up 10 schools in all 50 states. Again, if somebody's going to look at me and say, like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, that's impossible. I'm like, okay, like, well, that's my mission. Like, that's the goal. Like, it was, somebody thought that it was impossible to, and I always say this, to fly a piece of, like, metal through the sky. Somebody thought that was impossible. A lot of people thought it was impossible, but now that's how people travel. It's one of the top ways people travel. You know, somebody thought it was also crazy and stupid to drive a mechanical horse, a car, you know, through the streets. But somebody brought that to life too. So it's like, it doesn't matter what they think. It just matters what you believe. So
100%. I get chills on that when you say that. I got chills, and I'm so inspired. I want to, like, buy one of your. I want to buy a school. I want to start a school.
Well, I definitely will need lenders, so need funders.
I want to support one of your schools. Oh my gosh. You're very inspiring for sure. Yeah.
Saying that, and you're getting me at a very, like, delicate time. Like, I'm at a time where I'm trying to reinvent myself. Like, I'm trying to, you know, build my own situation up. You know, I'm trying to get new jobs. Like, I'm doing a whole lot of things, and I just don't feel very inspired. So thank you for saying that I was inspired.
You are extremely inspiring, and
that means a lot. Yeah.
I love your vision and your intention that you're putting out there of the 10 schools in 50 states and using the the P word, but what I gathered in how you describe that is your intention is not private, exclusive, taking away, it's giving out, it's going outward, and to change it, right. It's from the bottom up. And so if it's 10 private schools to start, to change the public, to change the way that system of education is, because that is a much more effective, mindful way of changing it, because to try to do it top down is not the way to go. It's bottom up. And so when I hear the P word and the way you're talking about, it's not the way a lot of people think of private schools. That's not what, at least that's, I don't know if that's your intention, but the way you talked about it, it was as though your heart was opening up and like, this is it,
yeah.
And
it's all, that's why I said the P word, because in order to overthrow, in order to like really see the salient change you want to see in the world, like you have to sometimes, like do some things, like play a little dirty, that's why I said the P word. Like I'm doing it through the means of private, and I know that that's going to get some scorn, but it's like I don't know any other way to really make it work. And it's all like, if we can make it happen, like how I just said, make it so that we open up accessibility. I don't see why privatization needs to be bad if you can do it like that.
So your P word is actually possibility.
Right, exactly. You want to add possibility to the public, public possibility. That's really what it is.
Oh, good too.
Love it.
Providing public possibility. You got a lot of P's there.
That's so good. The triple P.
Yeah.
So this has been such a great conversation. Tia, do you have anything else that you want to bring in, or Robert, do you have any other questions?
I feel we could talk for a lot longer, but we want to always be mindful of our episode lengths and whatnot. So this has been incredible.
I was gonna say we should do another episode. Maybe we can switch, because I have a show too. So I also have a co-host. So maybe we can, I don't know, we can do a show on the Astwood Education podcast.
Absolutely.
Would love that. Are you ready for your 5 questions?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, sure.
All right. So the first one is, so we were talking about masks, right? And obviously our show is Masks Off. So what's the most prominent mask that you wear in your life, do you think?
I don't know. The most prominent one. I try to look cooler than I am, maybe. Like I try to be, I try to have an embellished image of myself. I want to be cooler, I
love it.
Greater than I really am. I don't know.
That's good.
It's good. All right. You were talking about China earlier. So if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Right now. Doesn't mean just like right in this moment.
Oh, right this second. Oh, okay. Yeah. The first thing comes to mind is Italy. I've been to Venice before, and it's just nice over there. I'd like to go back to Italy.
I'd love that. So, this kind of comes into line too with your education and kids and all of that. So what's your favorite way to take care of yourself? Because that's an important part for kids to learn too in education. So how do you take care of yourself?
Well, I do a lot of reading, like audiobooks. Like I do, because I think the most important way to take care of yourself is mentally, because it's mind, like a lot of it's a toss up. Sometimes people will say action leads to thought. I think they go both ways, but I do think the mental way is stronger. So yeah, I try to read different audiobooks. Classics like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read those, but then I read some other ones like The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, and I think I had, what is it, The Power of Now too in my queue. I didn't read it yet, but
it's good.
So yeah, different books like that.
Good. Well, so leading into the next question, I want to go to the 5th question, but I'm going to hold back because of what you just said. Yeah. What if you have a bucket list, what's number 1 on that list?
Well, I already said open 10 schools, so I guess I can't say that. So maybe it would be, well, one thing, so this is not a bucket list. I mean, I guess it is a bucket list item. I just know I'm going to do it probably way sooner than any bucket list time. But one of my visions, I'll just tell you one of my immersive visualizations. How's that? So
Perfect.
Just,
Perfect.
I'm on a couch, I'm sitting across from, I got a nice suit on, a light blue suit, light blue shirt, nice, maybe a checkered tie. I don't know, maybe I gotta change the tie, but I'm nice, looking nice, brown shoes, and I'm sitting across from Robin Roberts. It has to be Robin Roberts. Hopefully she's there, when I make it. But Robin Roberts, she's gonna be doing an interview, and she just like how we're doing now. But instead I'm gonna be on live TV, talking, my legs crossed, talking about, what does it mean to cultivate a brighter future? Like that's the visual, that's the bucket list.
Love it.
It's not
And
a
I
bucket list,
love
it's
how
more-
you're so,
yeah.
I love how you're so detailed in it too. Like what you're wearing, like the energy of it. Manifestation is definitely one of your strong suits, I can tell. Just the way you
Thanks.
describe it.
That's why I said it's not even a bucket list, because bucket list is something like people like say, oh, when I get the chance, before I die. And it's like, no, this is going to be much sooner before that.
Love it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then the last question is, since you listen to lots of books, what's one of those books that's changed your life?
10X Rule by Grant Cardone, hands down.
Mm.
Absolutely. That book, that's what got me started, like to play at this level. And I'm still not even at the level I need to be. Like I'm slacking compared to my full power, but like that book really helped to turn my spirit on, like to the level that or at least closer to where I know I could be, because like he just talks about just putting in 10 times more effort into anything and having like 10x goals and having this big vision. Like that's kind of I think where I got the 10 schools from, is like, all right, like what's a 10 goal, 10x goal, a big vision, a big mission that I could
I love that.
really, yeah. So that's the book, the book.
Great.
April 15th is when I really got into, that's not when I read it, but it was around that time was when I read it. But that's when I started my podcast. So that's a good mental marker for me to like know when I even started on this journey at this level. So yeah, April 15th last year. It's kind of when I started.
That's great.
So those are the 5 questions, right? We did 5.
Those are it.
I just want to say, like, while I love all the guests that we have on the show, I love having guests on here. I want to say that your energy, I love it. Like, besides being inspiring, you're just so relaxed. I feel that you're 100% yourself right now. And throughout this whole podcast, you're 100% real, authentic. And I just wanted to acknowledge your energy and how much I love it.
Thank you. That means a lot.
So thank you for being on the show. But before we do wrap up, how can listeners reach you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah. So, my main method of, I guess, impacting the world would be Instagram. You could find me on Instagram at Aster_education. You could also find it on Twitter too. It's the exact same thing, Aster_education. Aster is spelled ASTER. Sometimes people think it's OR, but it's ER. So that's ER. I have YouTube, but I don't really use it. I mean, it's like 8 videos if you kind of want to see my face a little bit. It's on there. I think it's the same thing, Aster_education. Oh, I also have a website too. I almost forgot. Yeah, that's right. So the website is called astereducation.net. You could just type in www.astereducation.net. It'll take you to my website. It's an author site. So the first thing you'll see is my book. And if you are interested in education and school change and rethinking our education system at a systemic level, definitely might want to check out that book. You could find it at my link. The link, I guess it'll be listed in the podcast.
It will.
But the link in my bio at Aster Education, but also at www.astereducation.com. .net. Excuse me. I didn't pay for .com because .com was taken. But yeah, I think that's everything. I don't know.
And your podcast, you have a podcast show as well.
Oh yeah, you see, I make too many things that I forget what I have. Yeah, I have a podcast show as well. You can find me on Spotify or what is it? Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. I think they have it on Breaker, Google Play. I don't know. Do people even use that?
Yeah, some do. Not as many.
But yeah, so I'm on there too.
Awesome.
But definitely, tune in. And stay cultivated. That's always what I like to tell everybody. Stay cultivating. It means to stay improving, stay moving forward, and just stay becoming a better version of yourself.
Awesome. And we will have all that listed in the show notes. Anything else, Tia? Oh, do you have something for the listeners?
So there is, all right, listeners, I'm sorry, because there is supposed to be a promo code for you guys. I don't have the promo code yet.
Okay.
We'll put it in the notes when you have it.
We will.
Yep.
But don't worry, there will be a promo, and it'll be like a discount to like, you know, if you listen to this episode, you'll be able to, you know, get access to the discounted price of the book, The Essence of
Awesome.
Education. And yeah, basically anybody who listens to the episode
We'll get it.
you would get yeah.
Yep. So grab your
Fantastic.
copy. This has been amazing. I am so energized right now, and
So
just
Awesome.
I can't wait to see all your schools opening up around this country. And you have the energy, the enthusiasm, the passion, the commitment to having all of your visions come through. You know, it may not happen in the exact same order you want, but as you said, just like earlier, the path is going to be there, the stepping stones, the lessons, and I'm excited to witness and see what you bring out into this world, because we need you.
Absolutely.
100%.
And you know, I'm ready.
Yeah, it's clear.
It is very clear. Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you everybody for listening. As always, if you enjoyed what you heard today, give us a like or subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Masks Off.
Thanks, everyone.